The guy was saying, yeah, he needs a woman who's there for him, a woman who's submissive. She was like, time out, hold up. What are you talking about submissive? And her whole thing is, I'm not a submissive woman. I'm an independent woman. I'm this, I'm that, da 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 da.
This is Ceasear Walker, the cool, calm, collected one.
And I'm Ronnie Gatrey, the emotional one.
And we are the Tipping Point Podcast, your source for the black male's perspective.
Tipping Point Podcast.
I sent you guys some information from Crew Season, their show on YouTube. Dope content show. They was talking about submission, in particular interview with Jazzy. I think she was on a podcast talking about submission. And it made me think about, their conversation, which they open up talking about why is that word so triggering? And it really is. Like, all you got to do is go to your timeline, either on Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And if you just throw that word out, it's just watch the fireworks. So I wanted to bring it to you guys, and just as a lead in, why do you think that word is such a triggering word for women?
Knee-jerk reaction. I mean, women, in my opinion, feel like when it's time to submit, that means to give up of themselves and their entire being to some man, and be beneath and be voiceless.
Yeah,
that's just some knee-jerk, top-level reactions, in my opinion.
Okay. And that I'm assuming they view that as a negative, obviously.
Yeah, and it I think it plays hand in hand into this modern age of woman that we've talked about often on the podcast. Yeah. And we've had the dichotomy between the traditional woman versus the current modern age woman. And I feel like, some modern age women scoff at that, because that is showing the way the woman the way the woman was before, and not necessarily now.
Who she's involved into.
Yeah, because I mean, women got bags now. Like,
gotcha.
Women are bosses.
Okay. You got any other thoughts on it? You good?
Pass it to Black.
Pass it to Black. Black, why do you think, there's some women who understand. It's not all women, but why do you think for the women, like the woman on the show I watched, why do some women at hearing that word shifts their whole day or countenance?
I don't know why, man. I don't know where it got such a negative connotation from, because we're like one generation removed from it not even being an issue to now, where it's like they challenge the word at every chance they get. I don't know, but it seems like watching that clip that you shared, it's like they're willing to submit if that guy has a lot of money. They will change that tune if the guy can like really take care of them. Then they're willing to submit. So it's like they would do it conditionally, but at the onset of a relationship, if say they're equally yoked, there would be no submission.
If they're equally yoked?
Like if she's making X amount of dollars and he's making X amount of dollars, there probably won't be no submission.
If he's perceived to be on the same level as she is.
Yes. There would probably be no submission.
I've heard in response to that, I've heard that if a guy is on the same level as the woman, in her minds, she's still above him.
I mean, it's kind of like, was it Malik that gave us the whole Wendy's thing?
Yeah.
Which they had a slight reference to that in the video clip. Right? Do y'all remember that part? Yeah, not Wendy's in particular, but similar scenario.
Women dating up.
Yes.
Yeah, because traditionally, a man will marry a woman, and he would be on top, and she would be like below him, like financially.
Right.
But nowadays, women are making just as money as men, and they still expect to find that man that's making more money than them.
Right.
And I think in that situation, that's when they're more willing to submit. But like if y'all coming in and if he's equal or less, probably would be in a submission. But that's where things get kind of tricky because, like, I don't think most men are looking for a partnership. They're looking for someone to be in charge and someone to follow.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where a lot of conflict comes now. Because, like, I can't speak for a lot of men, but I would think they're not looking for a equal partner.
Right.
And I guess y'all can tell me because y'all are married. Like, when y'all went into marriage, were y'all thinking, hey, we're going to this 50-50, we're partners, or I don't know, because I'm not in that situation.
We didn't really have, I think, I'll be honest, for me, I was kind of, our value systems were very similar because of our environment. I'm Christian, she's Christian. So there were certain things in play that we were already kind of walking in. And I think when I look back on it in retrospect, I can put a name to what it was we were doing. But I think in the moment, I don't think I had the clarity of, I knew that I was going to be be the leader of the home. She understood that. It was a growing process because we were young, right? But yeah, I don't think that there was an issue or determining who was going to do what in that regard. I think we were just kind of figuring some things out. But what about you, Gatrey?
Yeah, our situation is unique, and in that when my wife and I got married, you go through premarital counseling. They read all the right verses, you study over them. But man, like that head of the household thing, like no one was really involved with that. I wasn't there. It was just like, well, what's she gonna tell me? Like at this point, I got the bag. I have the house. I'm earning well for my age at that time. Like there's a lot of success around me. My wife was still in school, and so I'm just like, we don't even need to talk about submission because this is the way it's set up. Now, I will admit my viewpoint on that was wrong because I based that on what all I was bringing to the table at that point from a material standpoint. Right. And so what's interesting about our relationship is we witnessed a shift when my wife got into her profession and the bag shifted. Yeah. So submission for us was a slippery slope. And just to be keeping it really honest, at times it still is. And I say all that to say, when we think about, or excuse me, I'm not going to say everybody, but I know at a point in my life, I would tie submission purely to financial success. Wasn't right. I'm not proud of that, but that's where I was.
I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
To answer the question, why is it viewed so negatively by many women? I think there's a lot of ignorance around the term submission. And anytime you have ignorance around something, you have potentially three outcomes. You have the misinformation or the misunderstanding around something, which potentially leads to the misuse or the abuse of that thing, right? On the part of men and women, okay? And anytime you have the misuse, it leads to the third outcome, people can potentially get hurt. And the problem is that we've seen men, you have, I don't think submission in and of itself is a bad thing, but I think in some cases you have what I call bad actors. And I want to share this with you, Gatrey. I want you to go back in time. I'm about to date the heck out of us real quick, okay? I don't know if you did this your senior year in high school, but there was a club our senior year in high school. It was in the Birmingham metro area. And it wasn't a black club. It was a white club. Senior Frogs.
Yes.
Yes. Buddy. It was a white club, but on a particular night, Sunday night to be exact, they would play hip hop music, right? So those of you listening, go along, especially if you're our age, you're going to love this. If you were in Birmingham during the year 2000, you could relate to this. And it was like if you were in Jefferson County, it was Jefferson County school system's best kept secret. Because for weeks, like on Sunday night, we will be at this club getting our entire senior year in that club, right?
Yeah.
And this was before the social media era, so it was a secret for a while. But as everything goes along, word begins to spread. People go back to school, people, talking to other people. More people started getting wind of this club. And anytime more people start getting wind of a good thing, you're going to have more people come, and you're also going to have the introduction of what I call bad actors. Bad actors are basically people whose intentions don't line up with the thing that's in question. Because the whole purpose of the event was for us to have a good time, enjoy ourselves, go home. But now you got people showing up, they looking for people. They you know what I mean? They're not there to have fun. And as a result, it started getting incredibly ratchet.
Yes.
It started like fights started breaking out. And what was once an innocent event or club, the reputation began to shift. And the reputation of that club began to take on the reputation of those bad actors. Right? Even though they were the minority.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm there, you there. We had trying to have a good time. We just trying to dance up on some white girls. Let's be real. And enjoy.
What you're talking about.
You don't know what I'm talking about? But you know what I mean? Like we were there to have a good time, but you have other people there. And now when people started mentioning Senior Frogs later down the road, it's like, I don't know about that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't that Senior Frogs was a bad place. It was the bad actors. So my point is that unfortunately there are a lot of men that either don't fully understand what submission is, how to execute it, but then you also have men who are in bad faith, have a secret agenda. And I think what has happened with women is they see those examples and they have reduced submission to the worst case scenario.
The extremes.
You're submitting to a tyrant.
Right.
Right? Who's oppressive, abusive, selfish, mean, evil. That's the only type of man you would ever submit to. And I see this a lot, fellas, in, I'm gonna be honest, some, not all, some women empowerment groups, right? Sections of women empowerment, I see this in some spaces. And it's almost a kind of, and the thing about that is that motivation, the thing about fear, because it's really fear mongering at the end of the day. Fear is while it's a very effective motivator, it's also can be a very unhealthy motivator, especially in the long term, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is that a lot of women, their attitude towards submission is fear-based. And why it's unhealthy is it creates this negative attitude towards men long term. You have an issue with male leadership. You have an issue with, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
That's a problem if you're trying to have a long-term relationship with a man. And I get it. I'm not against women empowerment. Not at all. My wife, I hope to have a daughter someday. I want them to all feel empowered. The women I love, I want them to feel empowered. But I think this is where the whole thing about being independent comes from in certain spaces, because you don't want to be this powerless, weak woman who's under the thumb of some man, right? And so I think that we've seen how men can poorly execute submission and create a bad taste in a woman's mouth. But we've seen how a woman can use a personal experience, entertainment, and see the worst of it. And that's one experience, but it's disingenuous because there are other experiences where a woman willingly submits and she's happy. She wouldn't have it any other way. The man loves her, respects her. She has a voice. She's also a leader in the household. And so I think when you talk about what's triggering, you have to consider that woman's experiences and what's feeding her value system and what she's learning from. But your thoughts on that?
Oh, I can agree with a lot of that. Yeah, it's, and I don't know where it started, but yeah, I think especially when you're talking about like high achieving, high earning woman, yeah, I can see, especially with your example, I can see how that can be triggering to some. So yeah, I'm with you.
And if that's the only example you got, I understand why you wouldn't want to submit. But
Right.
there are other examples out there.
Right.
And and that's where your bad faith arguments start to come into play.
Yeah.
If I submit, I'll lose my voice, I'll lose my place.
It'd be like the color purple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that, you know good and well, every woman who has throughout history who has chosen to submit to a man has not ended up barefoot, pregnant, and beaten. Right.
Right.
So
yeah, I see. Hence the bad actors. Yeah.
See what I mean? And so since we know that there are better examples of submission, what is how would you define submission and what does it look like for you?
Ooh, okay. Can I get there and start by what it doesn't look like?
I want you to take your time and do what you got to do.
Okay.
Cook.
So
We finna cook, Gatrey.
okay, let's cook then. As I said earlier, I don't think my initial thoughts of submission in a marriage were accurate.
Okay.
Because they were tied to me being the breadwinner and things like that.
Yeah.
But I will say, I know I didn't have that example of what submission looked like. I didn't know it just not something we talked about. You know what I mean? So I was left to form my own opinion of what that was. And from time to time, lean on homeboys when we would, in a rare occasion, we talk about it, right? Because it's so easy for a man to read that scripture and just absorb it and be like, yeah, you got to do what I say, right? It's that's how I did it.
Right.
One of the things they talked about in that clip that really resonated with me was that when it comes to a man displaying submission, it's about that man having a vision.
Mm-hmm.
It's about that man having a focus. It's about that man having a plan and believing so firmly in that plan that the woman really, I'm just going to say, y'all take it however you want to. The woman really has no choice but to bind to it and align with it. But what I realized was, even in my courtship, even though things look good, like I think about it from my wife's point of view. Oh yeah, here's an educated black dude. He's very corny. He gets on my nerves sometimes, but hey, he's got a house. He's got a steady job. He doesn't seem like he's about any type of drama. He doesn't have any. I mean, like I'm checking a lot of boxes.
Right.
So the talk of like, well, what's your vision? What's your focus? May not need to happen because some of it's already evident in what you can see from there, right? So, in thinking of my wife and I in our courtship, we didn't really talk about that much.
Because it was more about your actions, not what you were going to say.
Yeah. And then I mean, I met my wife in church. So, I mean, like, that's another big plus. I'm in church, 3 or 4 times a week at that point in my life. I'm very active. So, like, that's got to be another plus, right?
Tell me this. You mentioned church. When I think about it, we were seeing submission in church with like the pastor, the pastor's wife, the deacons, the deaconesses, just people around the church. You saw, because I know like when we have we have like a function at the church and they have food, who gets served first?
Pastor.
And then the men and the women are serving them in the church. So we saw submission growing up.
But we don't talk about it.
Right.
But you're right. I agree with you. I never thought about that. But it's something about explaining what we're seeing at the luncheon after church.
But we lived it.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So going. Thank you for sharing that. Going back to my false sense of submission. What I realized as our marriage matured was that now my wife is in and we're dealing with things now. And so I made it very easy for her to see that I didn't really have a vision. I didn't really have a plan. I didn't really have a focus. And if I did, they were very acute, right? So that caused a level of turmoil. And I can understand, and it's so crazy because this is a lesson I've learned, obviously, being married almost 13 years now, but I'm so thankful I got the chance to relive it through the lens of what we saw in that video.
Yeah.
Because I could see a lot of the pitfalls, a lot of those I made, but I can understand some of my wife's actions because now here I am. We peeked under the hood of this marriage, and this man is missing a lot of things that are key components of submission. Right.
Is it go ahead, Black.
I'm just gonna ask you this: do you feel that you are a leader
now? Yeah.
Do you think she saw leadership in you?
Then?
You took my question from me.
Oh, okay. That's where you're going?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I probably didn't ask it the way you were going to ask it.
No. Initially, no. You remember that point in the video where they're talking about, in terms of leadership and submission, a man's got to be able to admit when he's wrong.
Yeah.
I did not do that.
Let me ask you this. Do you think
don't act like you don't remember. I was very defensive.
No, it's just it's so far from who you are now. That's why I'm like surprised.
Right.
Just with us. Listen, so is it possible to be a good guy but not a leader?
Yes.
And do you think a lot of us are just being good men?
Yes.
But not picking up the leadership component?
Correct.
Being a good man gets you married for the most part, but when it's time to do marriage,
it's not enough to be a good man. It's not enough.
Tell me this.
A bar?
Tell me this, Gatrey. Do you think
that's good?
You think you had the tools to be a good leader? You just needed to develop them. You didn't think you even had the tools to be a leader?
I know I didn't have the tools.
Because I think a lot of people, men have like the innate like tools within them to be a leader. It just takes some time to develop that as a skill. And it may not be best to develop that skill while you're married, but that's how it is sometimes.
Well, the biggest knock I have on myself in terms of like leadership formation, in a marriage was, and I'm going to say was because I'm being delivered from this. I was a people pleaser, and it's so weird. Well, I'm being delivered from this. I'm not anymore,
bro. I almost want to give you a bear hug for saying that.
For owning it?
A double hug?
Almost no.
Oh,
no,
hey,
that's
therapy
still
works sometimes.
That's still weird. But
I say that in jest. It's just I can be hard-headed at times, so yeah.
A year ago, you was embracing being a people pleaser.
Oh my goodness, man!
So for you to say, "Hey, I'm being delivered from that," that is major.
Yeah, dude,
that's a big deal.
I shun that, man. I shun it.
You say
I'm
no now?
I'm proud of you.
Yeah, thank you for real.
No,
thank you.
that is a step in the right direction. Continue.
Yeah. So I appreciate that for real. That was one of my biggest knocks because in my viewpoint it was I'm a people pleaser by nature. I don't want anybody around me to be you feel uncomfortable, feel like slighted. But now I got a wife now, so like that's going to be above anything. She's going to have to like everything I do.
Yeah.
She's going to be pleased with everything, and there's ever friction that hurts me.
Happy wife,
happy life.
That's a lie, ain't it?
But it was such an interesting situation because here I am saying that I want to please her with everything I have, but behind closed doors we're having these disagreements, and I'm being very defensive over things. Mm-hmm. You would think a natural people pleaser would just accept whatever the cause of the discourse was and say, "Oh, I'll fix it and make it better." No, not at that time in my life. Well, she was wrong about everything.
But I think there was a few things, not to get off on a tangent, but I think there was a few things working within you. People pleasing being one, but pride being another. And sometimes those things can bump up against each other, and you flip in different situations. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I mean that's nothing that like I've dealt with that.
Right.
I've dealt with that just being in pride. Like if I thought something. If she needed something done and I thought it was stupid, it was not getting done.
Right.
Not at all.
You probably had enough sense to not tell her it was stupid, though.
I did have enough sense to do that.
Not your boy.
But even though I didn't say it to her face, she was still frustrated because I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it was still turmoil in the household. It just I didn't throw a match on the gasoline like you did, right?
Right.
You just smelled gas in the house,
right?
So. You know, did you have any more about your thoughts on submission? Were you still crafting
nothing different? But yeah, that's the crux of it. Yeah.
So, for me, you know, I think about the word submission. The word sub is a prefix. It means to go under, be under, right? Do you have the definition of submission, Black, that you can look up? I know our new producer. Has a lot of stuff over there
with added toys.
Yeah.
It says the action or fact of accepting or yielding to a superior force or to the will or authority of another person. Number 2 is the action of presenting a proposal, application, or document for consideration or judgment.
So the first definition on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being incredibly triggered, what would you give that definition?
Oh goodness. In my own mind?
Yeah.
19 again.
18.
Yeah, don't be extra. Don't be extra, Black. But that's triggering, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because it implies it dictates that someone is superior and the other person is inferior, right? When I think of submission, the prefix sub means to go under. Mission is an objective or a goal. So when you're submitting, you're coming under the vision and the mission I have for this family, right?
Right.
And so to me, I think it's simple for a wife to come under the goal, the mission of that husband, and that's where her term helpmeet or helper comes into play. She is helping that man achieve the vision for their marriage, their household. It's that simple.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And everyone has a role. Now, I think they even mentioned it on the clip. They talked about how women submit on their jobs all the time.
Yes.
Which I thought is a great example. Now, let's take that example because we're still forming the definition of submission. Let's take the job analogy. How did that woman get the job? How did she even get to the point where she's submitting on the job?
She had to interview.
Before you interview, you have to see what?
The job description?
I know he was going to get that because he probably looked at something today. And he did. He's shaking his head, yes. I knew you was going. You never failed me on that one. She found a job posting which detailed the responsibilities and expectations required of her. Right?
Yeah.
Before that, you had a business with a whole mission that it's been doing quite well, right? No one gets hired by a job that hasn't started yet as a business, unless you starting a business yourself, right? So you have a job in a department that's been ongoing, or maybe even forming, but it's part of a business that's been ongoing. That business has a mission statement. That business is doing well in pursuing that mission statement, and it's even yielding some profits, or it's profitable, obviously, because they're paying you a salary, right? And now they have a job description where it details what their expectation is. And so much so, there's so much productivity from this business that the woman actually sees how she can benefit from being part of the team. So in the way that she's able to submit, she understands her role, she understands her responsibility, and it fits her skill set. She's a fit for the business. They're a fit for her. She's a good cultural fit. That business has a culture. That business has a way of doing things. And so we want submission, but do we have a culture? Do we have a mission? Are we pursuing that mission? Are we profitable? And do we have an opportunity for this woman to come under our mission such that she can flourish being under our mission? when you find a woman who can do all of that, she's going to have a very easy time submitting to whatever it is you have for her, just like she does on her job.
Gotcha.
Thoughts?
It was just curious. I was looking at some similar words. You have submission, and some similar words to submission are yielding, capitulation, agreement,
yes,
acceptance,
yes,
consent. I'm like, those aren't bad words, but they're similar words to submission.
right. And what we have to some people define submission as slavery. And I'm sorry, Kanye, but slavery was not a choice. It was not a choice.
And with submission, I'm not married, but submission, I don't see it as being something like just cut and dry, black and white. Within a marriage, there are certain situations where it could be where the man submit. In some situations.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
It's not just all the woman submitted. Sometimes it depends on the situation. She may be the better authority in some scenario. He's like, okay, I'll let you take the lead on this.
Well, again, you have some supervisors on the job who take input from the employee.
Yes.
They're implementing the employee's idea if it's a smart leader. And I believe in servant leadership. So you're going to have that as a servant leader. Now, you said something about submission going. The reason why I think submission is great. I'm a Christian. So I understand everyone isn't a Christian. I get that. But the reason why I think submission is wonderful within a marriage dynamic is because the purpose of submission is to establish order in your household, in the marriage, because just from reading the scriptures, God blesses order. You think about the feeding of the 5,000. They had to have food. They grabbed the food. Jesus told the disciples, split the people up in groups, right? He blessed it, broke it, gave thanks. Then the miracle happened. But there had to be order that preceded before he could move. And most people in a marriage union want God to bless that union. There has to be order, which means there has to be submission in there. And so everyone has a role, just like everyone has a role on a team. Everyone has a role in a department or a company. Everyone has a responsibility, right? But everyone is also submitted to something. To your point, Black. And in this marriage dynamic, a woman is submitted to her husband, but that husband is submitted to
God,
which means he can't be a dictator and God bless this union. That would be disorder. Right. There's scriptures that says if a husband doesn't dwell with his wife properly, his prayers won't be answered. So we're not talking about a woman being oppressed or slavery, because as a husband, I want God's hand to bless whatever I'm doing in life, whether it's professionally, in my mind, spiritually, financially, whatever. If I can cut off my blessings for no other reason than I'm not relating to my wife properly. So I have to be submitted to God, right? I need submission just as much as she does. And when a woman sees, especially if she has a God consciousness, if she can see that you are submitted to God and that you are humble, you're meek, you're humble, right? You're submitting to his plans for the house. You have a vision. That woman feels safe with you. She trusts the God in you as a result. And so when you said that men submit too, you darn right we submit. That's why we don't have a problem with it.
That's a good point.
I gotta submit because I don't know what I'm doing. And I think with the times, I look back to my life, bro. The times where my marriage was in flux is when I was not submitted to God. The time where my wife, you said your wife wanted to leave. My wife wanted to leave.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, you ain't the only one. Join the club.
Yeah.
I was not submitted to God. The moment I got myself together, what do you know? We moving now.
Right.
So trust me, we got to submit too. That's where your mission and your vision comes from. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So that's why I think submission is such a beautiful thing, and I think we're paying attention to too many bad actors out there who don't understand the purpose of submission and are in disorder. And we have to find the right order, in my opinion.
Okay.
Just my opinion. Now, you may not be a Christian, you do what you will, but I know for me, speaking in my personal life, man, submission is important.
Right.
It's very important, and it's helped me. Let me ask you this, Black.
I got to go to church now.
You were just in church.
Let me ask you this, because I'm gonna be honest, I'm transparent, because I understand that there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Okay.
Right? I'm not saying that this is the only way, but what I'm seeing, and they alluded to this in the video, I don't know how submission works outside of marriage. I am not even going to sit. I don't know.
Well, you gave an example
Of?
the job description.
Well, I think
you mean
those
in terms of a dating relationship.
in terms of a dating relationship.
Gotcha.
I don't know, because you got to remember, you're in covenant in a marriage. There's a covenant element there in a marriage that's not present in a dating relationship.
Right.
So I can't fully expect this woman to submit because there's no order with this. See, that's why marriage is such a safe thing, because there's framework there, there's an infrastructure there, there's order there. In a dating relationship is where it gets muddy.
Right.
So I wanted to ask Black. Because Black is single. Black is out here. Not for real. But I want him out here. I want Black to get out here and dating. Black, what is your expectation when it comes to this submission thing in a dating relationship?
I guess I wouldn't expect submission in a dating relationship. I would expect to see, I guess, elements or qualities in a woman that would be willing to be submissive in a relationship. And when I say submissive, I don't mean completely beholden unto me.
Sure.
But just submission way you've described it. But I guess it would take see those qualities there to know that I'm not like, I would want to invest my time in this relationship.
That's a beautiful answer. That's good. Like that's a point I wanted to bring out is, in other words, you want to see if she's agreeable.
Yeah, just like she would probably want to see if I have leadership qualities.
Yeah.
I want to see if she has the qualities of what I'm looking for in a wife.
That's good. So she's agreeable, she respects you.
And I'm going to respect her too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What'd you think about that, Gatrey?
Well, how do you test drive submission?
Why you say test drive?
Because I'm saying it with a lot of extra flair to it, but like, yeah, I agree and I believe submission is best, or I guess rightfully enacted within the confines of a covenant.
Yeah,
but it's obviously important to men. But that woman in a dating relationship or courtship doesn't really have to submit to you.
no.
So how do you test drive that?
That's hard, because I've heard a lot of women say like, I will do right once I get married, not before.
Right.
And that's hard.
But that goes back to your point. That goes back to your point about you're seeing if this woman has qualities.
Mm-hmm.
Because see, here's what's hurting women who say that. You're not getting married, sweetheart. He doesn't have to marry you then. He needs to see the quality. See, that's like me saying, I'm going to be a masculine leader. I'm going to be a man once I get married. But I'm going to exude feminine qualities throughout this relationship, and you're going to love every waking minute of it. and you're going to accept my proposal. And once we jump the broom, masculine man. I'm going to turn into masculine man. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. That's the opposite of what women are saying. And what I'm hearing you say is that I want to see. You're dating to get to know each other. It should be light. And I think what happens in dating is we muddy the waters when we cohabitate, when we do all this. We do stuff that married people do, and it adds extra layers to it. And now you want the benefits of a marriage without being married. But what as I'm trying to see as a guy is, if I'm dating a woman, are you peaceful? Are you contentious with me? Are you agreeable? Are you willing to work with me? Those are things I'm trying to see while I'm dating you. That's how I'm evaluating the woman.
You're not looking for submissive traits out of that woman while you're dating.
I'm looking for the traits. Looking for the traits.
But not the whole
gamut. I'm not expecting her to say, hey, I need you to do this, this, and this. This is your role in our dating relationship.
Well, like, what is she willing to accept? As I'm getting like, what is she willing to accept within a relationship, and what she feel her role would be like in our relationship?
You know, I'm really of the mindset that I really feel like women could pick up on that.
Pick up on what?
Pick up on those leadership qualities in a man. I really feel like they can.
I think so.
Why you think you married now? She saw that, man.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, she did.
Did she?
She saw.
Even if I didn't see it.
How did you describe yourself before you got married? You were doing
a loose cannon,
but you had your own house.
No, you had your own. You were doing well. You were a good guy. You're a good guy, and with that, there's a lot of potential there to grow.
I can work. I think this.
I've met your wife. Your wife has plenty of sense in that she knows that you're not going to have everything figured out day one, but you have enough good qualities to where y'all can grow together and build a life together as you've done over these past several years.
Sure.
Come on, Gad. Did you have, I don't know, but when you were in the church, did you take leadership roles within the church?
Oh, yeah.
Did you take leadership roles at work?
Yeah. Okay. All right. I guess those count.
Yeah. Don't beat yourself up too bad to where you're like, there was no leader ever present in me. But no,
I just it's easy for me now to honestly compare the two. I just totally screwed up that wall.
It's okay. I was looking like that's new. Anyway,
that's why I said you can't give black folks anything.
Hilarious.
But no, I just assess it. And who knows? Maybe it's a maturation thing.
It is.
But a lot of the leadership qualities I'm beginning to be more intentional about forming, I feel like I should have had earlier in life.
Well, you got to grow, man.
I think we all can say that about ourselves, though.
Okay. All right.
We all can say that about ourselves. In fairness, be fair to yourself. But I mean, again, you're growing. We're growing. That's the whole purpose of this whole podcast is for us to grow.
True.
But I love your answer about looking for qualities in a woman. And I think that's why, you remember I talked about getting premarital counseling before you get engaged? That puts a lot of that, especially if you find a good counselor.
That's what I was just about to say.
Yeah, you got to find a good one.
Just going to ask the right question.
We went to 2 different ones, and we did a premarital course, like a 12-week course. And man, I mean, it's hard to prepare you for everything that's going to happen.
Know everything.
So it's not fair to like shine a dim light on these things.
I mean, shop around like you shop for a new camera and golf clubs. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Like, talk to people, find out where people went. And for me, we could have done a better job, even though we did have conversations about this. But you got books like 100 Questions to Ask Before You Marry.
Oh yeah.
You got exercises that talks about expectations. Like, that was one of the courses.
One of the biggest terms.
Expectations, and that if you do it right, you get to find out a lot about that person's upbringing, how their father was, how their mother was. And subconsciously, that sets their expectations, especially, like, for me, my dad was a truck driver. That he worked 12-hour days. He came home, he wasn't lifting, he wasn't doing much in the house. Blue-collar guy. He tired, and he got to get up in a few hours. So he's not really lifting much during the week. He comes home, eat, take a shower, talk to us for a little bit, he in bed. Rinse and repeat, right? My mom was doing a lot of the domestic stuff in the house. Well, my wife is working. My mama started working once I was in school, but when I was young, she was at the house with us. So subconsciously, I had this expectation that if I don't check that, I'll come home and decompress like Dad did. That ain't gonna work with her. She working just as many hours, and I'm not even working 12 hours. So that's why I think premarital is so important, because you get to clear the air. You get to put all that out there and talk through that.
A lot of that stuff we had to learn in the fire. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Did y'all do any conferences or anything like that?
Yeah.
You go to marriage
I know
conferences.
which ones not to go to.
More on that later. Shots. I mean, we need a shots fired. You need to learn that button, Black. But anyway, any more thoughts on submission outside of marriage, or what that looks like, or should men expect submission outside of marriage?
I don't think they should expect it. I think it would be nice, but they shouldn't expect it.
Gat.
I like your approach of maybe not expecting it, but identifying those qualities in that woman that generally translate to submission.
And become your own business, become an enterprise, have a mission. It's so Gatrey, this man. Challenges me, bro. And I love the fact that I believe part of my passion, I don't want to listen, if I ever I'm passionate about building up men, and that's what this platform has become. I feel a way when I hear women talk down on men. I really do.
Yeah.
I get defensive. But I'm also very critical of men, and that comes from a passion to see men be represented right and do well. And I think when I talk, my wife, I talk her ear off now about this podcast and about what we're doing. And so I just think it's important for us to find something that we're passionate about and something that we can make a mission out of. And so I think this podcast has been that for me. I don't know about you. I'm not sure what your passions are, but I think it's cool for women to see us have a reason to live and not going through the motions. It's attractive,
and like defeating the stigma as well.
Yeah,
because
being lazy and
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I won't get into that. But yeah, I was about to get into stereotypes. Stereotypical black men are not having these conversations. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Keep Your Point Podcast.